Hello guys, this is a review of The Boys Club and Turner Risk. I did watch these movies a while back. In a perfect world, I would review the movies right after I watch them, or at least soon after, but unfortunately I don't have the availability to do that, so I make do with what I have. This is going to be one of my shortest reviews. It's going to be very general, the summary of the film, as well as, more than anything, um, the description of how the movies made me feel. Let's start with Turner Risk. Turner Risk is a low budget film. It's about a couple of roommates. One is has suffered a lot of bullying, and you know how it goes when people have been tormented is what I'm trying to say. They're like, you know what? I'm gonna do the good thing by um, performing these atrocities. So the roommate is jobless, goes to an interview and meets his nemesis there and this other random guy, and then all of a sudden they team up to try and stop him. So it does have a bit of comedy here and there. Unfortunately for me, I was struggling to really get drawn into the film from the very beginning. Well, not the very beginning, like I'd say like 10 minutes in, I was like, I need a little bit, a little bit more, a little bit more. It didn't seem realistic at times. I'm not exactly sure if it was the acting or if it was the fact that it was such a low budget film, which, I mean, if you don't have the budget for it, then you better be well prepared to make it as real as possible. Something that very high grossing movies have is lots of explosions, lots of bells and whistles, as people say in music, but they lack soul, they lack realism. So when you have a low budget film, people should really take advantage of that. Eventually, though, throughout the film, like, it was kind of on and off, on and off, on and off, drawing me into the story, drawing me out of the story. But it was actually, it was enjoyable. Eventually, like I said, near the middle-ish of the film, I started to kind of feel like I was there. Made me reflect a bit. Nothing too crazy, but I mean, it's a fun watch. I also uh, respect when movies have people of different ethnicities. We always have, the typical white Caucasian male starring, and then everybody else is also white. Then maybe they have their one black or Latino or Asian friend. So that was pretty neat. I'd have to rewatch it really to get a feel of it, but um, I guess that kind of leads me to give it something of a 6 out of 10, a rating of 6 out of 10 in its category. Now, The Boys Club. The Boys Club, I came around to watching because of Devon Sawa. As we all know, he's in Final Destination, Chucky, Idle Hands, a whole bunch of Casper. At first, I knew what I was getting into, but at the same time, clearly not, because I was expecting something like a coming of age, rough film. But literally, the fact that Devon Sawa was in it, since he, like I said, he was Casper, I felt like how would like, and trust, I didn't do a research, so I don't know if Casper happened before or after, but if it happened after, it's kind of like, why would they risk having somebody who was in a film like this? I think it makes more sense that he was in this one afterwards, after Casper. Like, he's trying to, like, break away from his good boy image. The movie really surprised me, like I said, because I expected it to be gritty, but at the same time, no. But it ended up kind of being a heavy film, honestly, and I love that. It starts off like a regular coming of age, kids being kind of bad, drinking and stuff. They have their own little shed that no one knows about. And they come back one day, and there's this guy who is wounded. He tells them that he's a cop, and the days go by. They start helping him out, recover, providing him with a phone. And the whole twist, obviously spoilers as the title would suggest, he turns out to be the bad guy. It turns out to be a criminal on the loose. He's actually killed a cop, and it gets very crazy. Now, that's in a nutshell. The movie is really really good. I was really invested from the very beginning. I love it. Reminds me a lot of Stand by Me. It has that type of feel. Also, like The Outsiders. I love these type of films. Really brings me back to when I was a child, even though I was a goody two shoe. So, don't really have much to relate to directly, but we all have our little like um, bad boy illusions, whether or not they come to be. And like I said, this movie was very fun, and one of the scenes that I have to talk about because it was so heavy was one of the boys. They're like 13-year-olds. They're three. He falls for this girl. He will, has a thing for her, and she actually accepts to go out with him. And he takes her to the shed where the guy is at. He then, the adult, starts telling her, you know what, this is a man cave. So if you want to be here, you have to take your shirt off because girls can't be here with their shirts on. So she's like, "Oh yeah," and at first I was like, "Girl, aren't you like you're a little girl?" But obviously she was just joking because she had been drinking for so long. And then he starts pressuring her. It's like, "No, you have to do it." And I was like, "I don't like." I love movies that bring that out of me, where it's like, because it's so difficult to affect me, because I've been watching movies for such a long time, very heavy movies from a very young age, and especially in my like adult life. So it's really hard to really face me. But with these scenes, like it's uncomfortable because you're like, dude, like just stop, stop. But he wouldn't stop. He kept insisting, and I think like myself and the actors, I mean, we were all really uncomfortable. They did a perfect job, so I love that. Honestly, yes, I love that, but at the same time, if it would have been a little too much, as is the case with what is it, 120 days of Sodom, Salo, yeah, Salo, that movie. That one is just from the very beginning to like the end, it's very uncomfortable. I learned nothing. It's just people doing nasty things. And I wasn't even, I mean, I was watching, okay, so they're eating poop. Yeah, it is what it is. Because they're just like grotesque, grotesque, grotesque. But you need to have like larger periods of time where you're actually enjoying something fun, where they're doing something funny. It can't be so intense. So this movie did a great job because that's the only scene that I could think of that really made me like heavily uncomfortable, aside from also when he's like being mean to the guys, to the 13-year-olds. um but yeah, then eventually she actually leaves and she gets mad at her, the boy who's interested in her, and tells her like, you were gonna let him, well, you weren't gonna stop him, you didn't even say anything. But in his defense, they're very young, like very very young. They're not even like 16, to the point where you're like, well, maybe these are very big 16-year-old. They're very little in comparison to the guy, so they really couldn't do much. Very uncomfortable. um but very fun, very fun. I think it's kind of a warning to kids, like, hey, not just don't talk to strangers, but don't invite them into your shed. Don't let them, like, well, in this case, don't let them stay in your shed without telling other adults about it, no matter what they tell you. They're so gullible. And I think it's just a fact of life. No matter, that movie made me think a lot about myself and how you're a certain age, let's say 14 years old, and you're presented with a situation and you really feel at that moment. It's hard to think back, especially as you start 20, 25, you start getting older, you start to forget how dumb you really were. But I could think of times when I really thought that I knew the answer. I got it. Let me head on that down that path, and everything's gonna be, oh, whoa. You figure out like, okay, yeah, that was not it. I made a mistake. And then hopefully you learn, you grow, and then you move forward. But sometimes people don't have that opportunity because they either fall victim to kidnappers or just maybe heavy drugs, that type of stuff, and now they just can't reel themselves back. They're too far gone. So this movie made me think a lot about that. It was enjoyable. The performances were wonderful. Devon was actually really, really, really good in this one, um, as he usually is. But I was surprised because he was pretty young at that time, and all the other boys were good as well. One of them is like, these movies, especially like 80s, 90s, early 90s movies, we always have like the bullied one. There's a little bit of drama between the boys because one of them is like, I know he doesn't even like me, like he just tolerates me because like a lot of tension, which brings, like I said, realism, which is what I really look for in a movie, especially these types of movies. So I found it completely enjoyable and would very, very much so recommend it to anybody who can handle these types of films. I'd give it a rating of 9.5 out of 10 in its category. It's really, really good. And yeah, that's it for this one. Thank you for watching.